One of the first things that you'll write up in your journey towards the article and completing your master's degree will probably be an introduction. This may be initially in the form of a two-pager to highlight your idea to the panel that will be approving the topics for your master's degree. It might be in a slightly bigger proposal that you'll work on with your supervisor, or it might be in the article that you're going to be writing up. The introduction contains a lot of important information, and that's why all these documents need this information, and there's a fairly generic structure to it that we found over time. Your introduction is the part of the article or your proposal or your two-pager that sells it to the committee, to your readers, whatever the audience may be. It tells them what you are working on, why is it important, and how you plan on going about it. Now, this is done to various degrees. What you're working on is the purpose of the whole research project, the purpose of the paper you're writing up to report on your research. In the US journals, they generally give the purpose up front, given that it is so important, it's the focus of what they're working on, it focuses your attention early. International journals tend to put the purpose at the end of the introduction, feeling that they want to build up to that first. So that is the what. The how of what you're going to be doing will be the method. There's generally not that much written into an introduction on your method. You may introduce what method you will use overall, but not a lot of time will be spent on that. What is the most important is the why. Why is this important? Perhaps providing context to your audience. Remember, they might be interested in the topic but not have the background information on it. So you may need to give some of that to the readers in the introduction as well. When you're reading introductions and when you're going to be writing your own, it's worthwhile to have the analogy of an inverted triangle in your head. What we mean by that is you'll often start your introduction by providing your reader with a very broad base. What area are you working in? What part of society are you working in? And then you'll generally narrow this down and focus and focus and focus until you get onto your specific topic. For example, you might be working on something that falls within e-learning. You might begin with the e-learning overarching discussion, and then this might be narrowed down to a specific intervention that you're working on. Then you may be looking at a specific audience, then you give some information on that audience, etc. But keep the idea of a triangle in your head.
In your introduction, you will also give a brief background of the existing literature, showing how you are positioning yourself in that literature. When you have found a topic that you are interested in, it is a good idea to find at least 3 very recent papers that have done something similar. Not exactly the same, but similar enough, so that you can read those papers, that they help you form a structure in your head of what you want to do, how it can be done, what has been done, that you can see the recent literature, so that you can broaden your knowledge in this area. You can also do a replication study of one of those papers, but very important, it has to be a differentiated replication. There needs to be something different, something you are adding or looking at from a different angle. This will help extend the generalizability of existing knowledge to a broader context. The first thing you might want to think about and define clearly and write up is the purpose of your study. It's really important to know exactly what you want to do and why you want to do it, because this will help you structure your discussion in the rest of the introduction. An idea might be to use a coloring system where a specific word or phrase or theme that comes in your purpose you use a specific color for, and then the paragraphs following on this that discuss that idea or theme or phrase, you color in the same specific color so that you can see the flow through your introduction.
The more papers that you work through and the more introductions that you work through over time as you go through the research process and the writing process, the more you'll become familiar with what generally is found in the introduction and the flow that people tend to adopt, and that it's been successfully adopted by authors that have published. Taking that generic framework and then looking at those papers that are in your area, having a look at their specific structure. Those specific papers, those 3 papers that we referred to earlier on, they'll help you then put the contents into those areas that you want to flow through. We've often used the analogy that sit across the desk from somebody or stand in front of a hall of people. In your imagination, think of what your research problem is and how are you going to explain this problem to these people in front of you. Why do they want to know about it? What are you going to do? What's already been done? What background information do these people need? And try and structure that into a coherent discussion that you would be having with someone. An article is, after all, communicating information to the world. So although you're not doing it verbally and you're doing it in the written word, the way that you would structure the discussion with somebody, that you would give them information up front of something in anticipation of giving them some more advanced information later on. That is how your introduction needs to flow. Going down now to the little bit more of the nitty-gritty, we've spoken about the overall view of what is in the introduction, the flow of the discussion, etc. If we perhaps pause for a moment on sentence level. Remember, this is also, it's a scientific article you're writing, so it's generally a formal method of communication. So slang and such words are definitely not suitable in this environment. And also be careful, you may have statements you wish to make, but again, writing is part of the scientific process. You want to make statements based on things that have been proved with scientific evidence. So for most of the statements in your introduction, unless it is general knowledge to the entire world that the earth revolves around the sun, unless it's something general, it is always advisable, especially for a researcher starting out, to have a reference to somebody's work that has proved whatever you are stating. As a closing comment to the video now on the introduction, there's nothing scarier to any researcher. It doesn't matter what experience level you may have, whether you're starting out to have published many papers, than that blank page staring at you on the screen with a cursor flickering and not a word typed. Once you've identified the 3 papers that are the closest to you, you've documented perhaps on the side what their structure was, you've made notes for yourself what your structure wants to be, start writing, start telling your story, just start typing it up. You will move it later on, you will rewrite sentences later on, you will add extra sentences in, you will bring extra references in, you may bring completely different content in, and by draft 100, your introduction may look completely different to that first draft. But it is really much easier working with something that has existing text than that blank page staring at you. Just start writing.